Io sono
Good
Ali
evening, everybody. My name is Ali Filippini,
Stasera facciamo un
and
breve
welcome. Tonight we will have a focus on the interior, not only interior, but mainly interior with Andrea Marcante and Adelaide Testa,
studio Marcante Testa, li ringraziamo da
part
subito
of the
per
studio
accettare la
Marcante
nostra
Testa.
invito.
So we thank you right away for accepting our invitation.
Andrea e Adelaide lavorano insieme dal
And
2004, ma dal
Adelaide
2014
are working together since
hanno avuto
2004,
questa
but
coincidenza
in
di lavorare entrambi da
2014
distanza
they
e
opened this, they joined
appunto
forces
diverse
basically to open the
collaborazioni
studio Marcante and Testa,
sostanzialmente
and
sugli argomenti interior
they are
e
basically working on some interior projects in different scales.
prestigioso
Last
magazine
year,
riferito al
the
New York
prestigious
Times
T magazine
recensendo un loro progetto indicati come tra gli
of the
studi
New
più
York Times
interessanti da tenere d'occhio
mentioned them as the most one of the most interesting studios
diverse altre
to
riviste internazionali hanno dedicato loro
to
spazio con
observe,
grande
not only in
coinvolgimento
the Italian
e
landscape.
anche questo
Many
per
magazines,
rassicurarvi sul fatto che sono tra
let's say,
i
talked about them.
studi
And
più
I say this just to assure you that
interessantemente emersi negli
they
ultimi
are one
anni,
of the most
con un
interesting
linguaggio
studios emerged in in recent
che
years,
hanno
with a very
comunque
peculiar language that will help us
molto
to
interessante. La loro
understand.
ricerca
And
spazia
very
da
interesting.
interni
The research goes
residenziali, come
from
vedremo stasera,
residential
a
areas
retail,
to retail,
includendo anche dei progetti di allestimento.
including also
Quindi ci
some
sono
settings. We will see
progetti che
some
loro
examples. We have
illustreranno
8 projects that they will explain, they
ovviamente
will
attraverso insomma, le vostre
display,
domande, le
and
ponemiche
also through your
principali,
question and my curiosity, we will try to investigate in the
della
profile. The
conferenza
title
attraverso
of the
appunto
conference, the
chiacchiere,
headline of the
tra
conference is
emozione e ragione.
between emotion
Insomma,
and
queste
reason.
parole, questi aggettivi esemplificano
And reason.
il loro
These
progetto
adjectives
progettuale, sono
basically they represent
contrapposti
their
tra
belief, their design belief.
emozione
So in between
e
the
ragione, quindi
emotional
il
part
progetto
and
che
the control of the
viene
project, the
presentato
rational side, that in some
appunto
way
come
they
funzione
match and they
dell'organizzazione.
blend in what they do.
Io adesso
So
vi
I think
introduco
that I will introduce them to you
ci
now,
risentiremo poi
and
alla fine con le
we
domande
will
che ci
see,
saranno.
let's say, each other at the end for the Q&A session if you have some questions. So have a good conference, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Ali. And thanks to the SPD Institute for inviting us. We are very happy to be here. And well, we wish a very good evening to everybody, all the participants. I see there are a lot, so I'm very happy. So good. Well, okay. I would say that we might start right away from a travel. Let's try to do tonight, like Ali said, the 8 projects we will introduce, we will present today are the most recent project, not only done in Italy but also abroad. And for each project, basically, we will try to explain basically what is our approach to the interior design project. I guess that we should start. We could start right away. Yes, let's talk about the first project. So here we have a small map. So let's start from the first one. Cavalier Maggiore, which is a small town in the northwest of Italy, like 100 kilometers from Turin. Uh, we have the studio, we live and we work in Turin, and Cavalier Maggiore was interesting as a first approach to the client. Andrea could explain this because I wasn't there that day, the approach with the client. Well, yes, I guess it has been new. We didn't know this customer. He had previous relation, but the curator who was trying to put together different realities in which people should go back and live in areas, in spaces where they, and basically it was, we went to talk to this person who wanted to do this, and from that moment on we there was a feeling that then led to the project in the renovation of his grandfather's house. Yes, in this slide you can see some pictures of the outside. So how the house was before when we went there for the first time. So you also have a plan on the right where you can see the floors, and you will understand why it's important to notice the floors. And it talks about our wish of uh, the will of maintaining some existing parts in our project, regardless of their historical value or mm, representative value of a certain period. Regardless of that, we wanted to keep some parts, some pre-existing parts, because what we found inside of the home, it represented in a way the previous life of the nephew who inherited this house from his grandparents, and we wanted to keep this memory. We found this memory in the furniture, in the architectural elements, and the floors, for example. And we wanted this to keep on going, keep on living. Of course, in a more contemporary situation, in a more contemporary environment, in order to represent our idea of the project. Well, yes. Let's say that it was like a fil rouge, like a link between the project tonight, the one that you will see tonight, is this wish in the approach of the project in facing ourselves with the people who will live in these places, but at the same time compare ourselves and face ourselves with the place. So what is represented, how long is the been there. So basically, these are all references for all of our projects. And well, an aspect of this project that you can see from these slides, from these images, which which represent the house before we worked on it, you will see that it wasn't just an interior project, because we start to think about the relationship between the house and the external part, so everything around the house. Yes, and what I wanted to add is that in some way we wanted to convey the fact that houses, buildings, and places, they are not only measured in centimeters, but there is also a feeling, evaluation, the memory, the past that we would like to preserve in some way and to bring forward with us. So in any case, try to escape from the idea of the architect that arrives in a place, in a building site, and just destroy everything. Whatever was existing, destroyed, starting from scratch. Our goal is not this. Our goal is also to, as I said before, to let the client still be able to leave some pre-existing parts. At the same time, with the transformation of new elements that we introduced that we will see in the following slides. So let's move on with the slide. Next slide. Okay, this is what we found when we first went there. In the second picture, starting from left, the entrance, the first image is the day area, where probably the floor is original. Um, this building was built in the first years of the 20th century. It was a portion because the original house was bigger, and where Passane Sovrero was born. But you will understand why this is important. And this is important because it gives also the headline or the title of our project, because usually we always give a title to a project, and we needed to create the landscape, the feeling, the mood that is useful for the first research to transform it then into our project. So in the first picture, you see a floor that probably belonged to the first house, and maybe also the furniture. And the second picture from entrance, Here you see some floors as in kitchen and in the bathroom. These three floors are more or less they are the same age. So they belong to the town where the grandfathers of Enrico, the nephew who inherited, with the typical ties of the time where they were living. Next slide. So here, these are some other elements coming from 19th century, and you will see some details in the floors, in the pictures at the bottom of the page, the fireplace, the wallpaper on the last image. In part, we kept some of the wallpaper. These are some references that we usually put in our presentation, just to let the client understand what is going to be the mood of our project. Yes, there is. We have to say that in our approach, there is always this kind of storytelling. We think about the project as a narration, and this is also represented by the reference images, and it's very important to us because in some way it identifies some guidelines that we will try to follow throughout the whole process of the project, of the development, in order then to achieve the goal that we set ourselves at the beginning. So here we see the intervention on the outside. We replaced the previous entrance. It was just like a wall with a gate, not very original compared to the building, with an element that was designed by us. And it works both as an entrance and as a stair for the first floor. Also, in this case, we tried to keep some pre-existing part with the contemporary part. So metallic structure and bricks inspired by the country house that you can see on the other side of the road. The brick is very often present in the yarns, especially in Piedmont. Meanwhile, the metallic part, the mesh, wants to recall the structure. So here maybe you can see it better. So the previous floor with the gate, they were at the external boundary, the external outline of the house. So basically, you couldn't see the courtyard because there was this gate. So we freed the facade in a way, and we moved these elements toward the inside, as you can see here. So it starts from the ground, and using the stairs, you can go to the apartments on the first floor, and this metallic structure in fact continues inside of the house and becomes structure and project at the same time. So next slide. Also, the bricks are again typical. I mean, you see this is the stairs from the inside. We will see the access to the balcony. And here, this is the entrance. The entrance that we saw before in the previous pictures, if you remember. The blue line that goes inside of the kitchen as well, this one in resin, it starts from the kitchen, it goes through the whole house, the bathroom, also the living area, the day area. So, and we use this to make some renovations that were necessary, especially in the kitchen. And so we created this line that, in a way, distinguishes the new element from the old floor. The orange structure and the black or black and orange structure inside changes colorway, and it becomes the element that surround the space. The old materials, such as the wallpaper and the tiles, but it also becomes part of the furniture. So this is the old boiserie here, and what did we do? We created these furniture and we add them In this living room, we have a bookshelf with a small theater on the right that hides the TV, the vases, fireplaces. They are, in part, they are ancient and antique, and in part, they are part of the collection of the owner who is keen on antiques. And in the bedroom here, you see again the orange structure that creates the kind of frame on the wall. And again, it surrounds at the same time the wallpaper, just to define, just to make it an important element, almost like a proof of ancient times. And at the end of the day, we have the two twins, Enrico on the right, the one who inherited the house, and that you see the picture on the right when they were kids. The one is dead or alive. It was a picture that remained in the house also to witness this kind of things, to witness the past and the memory and the time that they have spent together in this house. Would you like to add something on that? Well, let's say that at the beginning this was a very interesting project because it puts us in a rare condition of being able to think about the aspect of memory, regardless of any kind of aesthetical prejudice or style prejudice. This project was also done with a limited budget, short timing, so we had a lot of boundaries, a lot of restrictions, but we think that we were able to reach the goal that we had in mind. So to be a project that kept this past, this memory side, but at the same time, uh, it made the house more contemporary, which was in some way the goal of Enrico, our client. So yeah, let's say that our goal at the end of the day was reached, but in some way we feel like in the future we hope that some of these will remain, and the others will be other stuff will be transformed like we did. I would say that we can move on to the next project. So now we will move on to East Italy, to Venice. Also here, there's a title that wanted to explain what? Well, another Venice. Often we are fascinated by the history of Venice as well. Compared to the previous project now, we will face some spaces where they completely lost the history. Calle Larga is this street of fashion, basically the fashion district that starts from Piazza San Marco, the main square, as you might know. Uh, it, it was a building with an important facade, but was completely changed in the inside. If you look at the pictures, on the left we have the main stairs of the building. So we had the ground floor dedicated to the stores, and the other floors they were dedicated to the apartments where our project intervened, let's say, because we worked on the whole building. But as you can see, they completely lost the relationship between the building and the environment surrounding. So the area where we had a lot of elements to hold up together before, now instead we wanted to bring Venice back inside of these buildings. Next slide. Well, when we think about Venice, we wanted to refer to some modern things, two characters, this eclectic scenographer, light designer, textile painter. So um, quite an important character, and Carlo Scarpa. From these characters, from their work actually, uh, we started with the first reflections, with the first discussions about how to tell these spaces. Next slide. In the previous images, I don't know if you noticed, but there was an image of the University Ca' Foscari in Venice by Carlo Scarpa. Venice, it's a hard city to work in. You can just imagine how complicated it is to manage a building site in Venice. And it's hard also because there are a lot of restrictions, not only the facade, but also the inside, the interiors. And usually the law doesn't allow people to change the internal structure of the house. And so there are a lot of structural problems. You need to think that these houses were built in wood. So when changing the different way might have a huge influence on the whole structure of the house. So basically, if you want, I think we distributed the space in a light way, and we imagined new element that could divide the entrance, the hallway, the public areas, let's call them, from the private ones. Especially, we started to work in the big main stairs. Next image, this one. These kind of stairs that brings you to a hall, to a lounge in a way, completely revisited. Only the handrail was painted with the different colors. I mean, painted different colors, but we kept it. The rest completely new. And some elements, like the one we said before, so to bring Venice back. I mean, here there is a clear evidence of this attempt in bringing the external environment into the interior. When we wanted to cover this kind of red element, the wall of the window, and at the same time, there was this idea of creating a sort of ledge, but with people. Usually, the ledges in the new houses that became some useless kind of space. But we thought that it could be a sharing area with the other inhabitants of the building, let's call it. And it was an anticipation on what will happen inside of the apartment. So, moving on, imagining common areas as something that we needed to change anyway, especially from the technical aspect. The one you see on the right is the entrance of the elevator with these Venetian marbles. So to emphasize this passage between the ledge and the vertical connections, moving on. And then let's enter into the apartment. We have this red structure, red Venice, Venetian red, and this element inspired by Ca' Foscari, that in a way we use it as a filter for the entrance, for the hallway, but in some way it also wanted to put us in relationship with the window you see on the background, and therefore with the Venetian landscape. The house is 250 square meters, but it was empty. It's used as a second house. So for example, the kitchen you see on the right, it's not that big compared to you would probably expect in such a big house. Moving on. Here you see, you will notice a detail of this Ca' Foscari element. Scarpa worked with wood. The profiles are very important, but the concept is the same. The idea came from a very simple consideration. That maybe one of the few elements of the house was this floor. You see this floor in wood with squares of wood. So on one hand, we had the need of dividing the areas. We need to create a passage in between. But on the other hand, we couldn't, we couldn't delete this design. So we just need to follow the path and at the same time bring in light, creating some cupboards or wardrobes to use also according to Scarpa's style. We wanted to use this stucco, Venetian stucco for the furniture. So moving on to the next image, you see how this element then opens up. You can open or close it based on your need, and you can put in relation these two spaces. So next slide again. Well, one of the aspects that we had to work on from the architectural point of view was again the relationship with the outside. Unfortunately, we had an environment with small windows. So at a certain point, we started to imagine a more horizontal image, like almost like we wanted to transform these windows into horizontal windows. We worked again with the brass structure, the structure there that joins them using this metallic curtain, gold metallic curtain. So basically, they erase the portions of wall between one window and the other. And so this storytelling got wider and wider, and in different shapes, let's say, from the choice of colors of the furniture, also from the fact that, as you can see, there is this lamp, the chandelier that you see is done in Murano by the glass blower. And actually, we wanted to explain the special light that you can see in Venice during sunset. We proposed the same work, the same concept of the light on the rug called Lake, and this rug has this changing aspect because just like the lamp, you would like to talk about the difference of light based on how you move inside of the space. So also here, we wanted to tell the story of a more brighter light, like in the morning, or at the same time, let's say a dimmed light, like in the sunset. So a warmer light, if you will. So there is a continuous reference to the Venetian context. Yes, I wanted to add just one thing, how important it was in a situation like this one to transform a weakness like the window into a strength. Okay, so maybe this was maybe the main problem and one of the first elements that we noticed in a negative way. So it was a reason to create a structure which enriched, according to us, the project. Yes, I mean, this is very, very right. And the fact that, to us at least, the approach to the project always started from spaces, how we divide spaces, divide the areas, the light, the relationship with the external part. And from this, we move on. So, for sure, in this case, a limit, a weakness became a point of strength of the project. So next slide, please. This is one of the bedrooms. And like we were saying before, also the choice of the furniture was coming from specific considerations from the things we were explaining, because this bed was designed by the son of Carlo Scarpa, but this modality arrived until the furniture, because we actually designed also the sheets, the bed sheets. So in some way it evokes the Venetian element. There is an historical Venetian company, Rubelli, and also the element is not was not chosen randomly, but also based on the meaning that it has in the design project. So the element in the background, as you can see, you can find it also in the bathroom connected to the bedroom. Well, since we couldn't add the seminato as a floor because we already had some floors, so we couldn't replace them. We just inserted seminato as a fabric. Yes, in fact, it was a wooden floor that we painted, but we couldn't change it. We couldn't change it. And you can also notice maybe how we used a wallpaper that was as a shaded color. So the use of wallpaper, paper in general, is again a comeback of the Venetian environment. So moving on. So also in this bathroom, we see how we can find some elements in this sort of a metallic structure, this kind of structure um, that reaches like the bedroom. Actually, the structure becomes the door itself. So the mirror that it allows the light to come inside. So it was a kind of tribute to Mr. Scarpa's work. So we tend in our project, we have kitchen and bathroom that are always designed because in some way they are strictly connected to the architectural space. Moving on. Maybe it's this is over. Maybe so. Let's move on from a scale of project that was quite important because on this Venetian project we are still working on this project, and the Venice project was I don't know, actually was quite successful and just like Adelaide. Yes, it was published a lot. Yes, it came out also because maybe Venice always represents in Italy and all over the world something very fascinating for everybody, and maybe also because it was a contemporary project in a city where new projects or contemporary projects are not that common. So because they give an interpretation to contemporaneity in such an unusual place, let's say. So from Venice, now we go back to the west, but in Côte d'Azur, in the French Riviera. In this case, some people, some Italians from Turin, they purchased the DPS. The DPS is an apartment. Maybe go on to the next slide. This one. You can see it in the plan. The apartments are organized in two rooms. One is a bedroom. The other one is living room slash kitchen, plus the bathroom and so on. So Adelaide, before was something, but this is a project of 2013. So, well, if you checked, okay, these projects are not chronological, so we are not respecting a specific timeline. They are mixed together, but we wanted to show you this project because from the point of view of the space research, we think it's quite interesting. So when we had to evaluate the strengths of this project, they were the ones that convinced the family of 4 people to buy this apartment, was the view. Because we're talking about a building of the 60s on the seaside, on the beach. And it's an apartment on the last floor. If you look at the image in the middle, uh, it's like you're at the front part of a boat. In fact, you can see what's underneath, what's under the thing. The only thing that you see is the sea and the sand. So basically, you only have the natural element. The customers at the time, there were a family of three people at the beginning: a mother, and a father, and a little girl. So you remember that they asked us this kind of ambitious thing because when we approach a project, obviously we try as much as we can to get the most information out of it, both functionally and from the expectations of the client, of the customer, but also from the emotional side. I mean, which kind of house they expect. So in this case, the requests, in the first moment, they went beyond the limit of such a space because they asked us to have a big living room, if you remember, two bedrooms, a big living room, a bathroom. I mean, and you think, well, we have 40 square meters. And I mean, your instinct would say, look, it's not feasible. You got the wrong house, you should do something else. And so there was a moment, not of crisis, but we had to talk to the clients. And then we started to talk, to listen, and from the plan, you see that there weren't a lot of alternatives, basically. Uh, we could only kept that kind of space or follow their hypothesis. So let's go to the next slide. So the the seaside, the beach, thinking that we are in a 60s building. So what was happening in the 60s on the beaches? And so we started to think, I don't know, maybe the life of the beach, the architecture of the beach, because you see, the French call these cabanes. Uh, Maybe in the East Coast we have it as well. But we also put the poster of this movie, uh, Casotto, and it was published, it was produced, released during those years, in that decade, and it explains the life on the beach, but especially the life inside of one of these cabanas. Also, next slide, because you will see a frame of the movie and just a brief video. And actually, the life on the beach has this kind of small architectures that are not just a place where you have to change clothes, basically. But in the movie, you can see how these places were, let's say, the set of relationships, of meals, for example, meetings. I don't know if you can, if we can start the video, maybe let the video start if you can hear it or see it. Maybe it's a bit slow. And in this movie, there is a very, very young Jodie Foster. I think it was her first movie. And as I said before, this cabin is a place where you meet people, where, let's say, to us, and it was a possible reference to organize the space in our apartment. Okay, we can move on to the next image. Here, you see on the top right the plan. The house is split in two. What does it mean? It means that we have the living room, the kitchen, the dining area, Of course, the part close to the terrace. The terrace becomes almost like a physical extension, not only visual extension, a physical extension of the inside. And then we created some micro rooms, some micro rooms that are like some cabins, basically. And very often, when there are a lot of relationship with the outside, I mean, this is what Joe Ponte used to say, used to do, design plan and the visual side. So try to explain from any point of view, uh, try to look at it outside of the areas. And this was also the choice of working with some environments that we could move or divide. So if you needed a certain privacy, you could also go. I don't know, Adelaide, if you would like to add something. Well, yes, besides the inspiration from the cabin, from the hut, the seaside, there was also this idea of the small house. So this disposition of the elements that gives an idea of a structure that can be disassembled, for example, and removed. I remember, by the way, that she wasn't that convinced at the beginning about this solution, because the prefabricated solution, because she thought that it couldn't guarantee any kind of privacy. So she felt that she had to sleep on closed space. So there was really we needed to almost lead them and convince them that this was the only solution. Because of course, if you want to enjoy the view of the seaside, if you want to have a big living room, but you also want two structures, I mean, it's a holiday situation. So it's a different kind of life. Well, now I will say something that might seem counterproductive, but very often in the meeting with our clients, we always say that the reaction of the clients is very often quite, let's say, they need to think about it, because the project that we propose very often destroy the expectations and the belief in our customers. Maybe in this specific case, she was thinking about the heart as a very light structures. And at a certain point, she said, "Well, it will look like I will be sleeping in a caravan in a moving house." Well, there are no walls, and in fact, there are no walls. So the big picture was from the entrance. Okay, so we had these two cabins on the sides that, in some way, they uh, they lead you to the view. And the two images, we had the children room, this one, the children bedroom, the open and close. It was a sort of model, like a little machine that we can go on to the next slide. Yes, and as a ceiling, they're not closed on top. There is like a kind of curtain on top. Huh? Yeah, maybe you can see it from the following slides better, but this is how to say that the kitchen itself became almost a disappearing element. It becomes just part of the space, and so some way this is a solution that helps when you want to make an empty area. So when you integrate some furniture and elements into the architectural side to make the perception of the area light. Also, in this case, the budget was quite limited. Yes, it was quite limited, and also consider the fact that quite often um, we leave the project in two phases. The first one that is linked to the distribution of the space, the demolition of walls, the renovation of the areas, and so on, which is made in this place. But one side, the other side, is the furniture. By furniture, I mean basically all the elements that will be part of the apartments, very often is we give it to some Italian companies that we work with, and so they're able to make it in some way. They're able to make it almost like a kit, an assembling kit. This was assembled in like a couple of weeks, so very quickly. And if you want, you can disassemble it, move it somewhere else, and do and assemble it in a different way. Also, the reference to the beach, the wallpaper. We can't see the wallpaper much, but um, the subject was like the scuba divers, maybe. Yeah, there was some scuba divers, so it was uh, maritime, let's say, oriented. I don't know if we have some other images after this one. Yeah, yeah. This is what you said about the curtains. You see, in some way, this resembles also the kind of curtains that you have on the structures on the seaside, like a restaurant on the beach, for example. And also using the typical wood of boats and ships. And so obviously we try to lead the storytelling. And as Adelaide was saying, we have this aspect in which you can open everything. So maybe the privacy is limited, but this is a holiday house. So we called it Fun House because it's important to have fun. Moving on.
Sì, mi inserisco, scusate, prima di
Yeah,
passare al
sorry.
prossimo
Before we
progetto
switch
che
on to the next project that also introduces
contesto
a new
rispetto
kind of
all'appartamento
context
che abbiamo visto
compared to
finora,
the
volevo
apartments
tornare
that we
su
have
quello che
stayed, the
avevo
living areas. I wanted to go back to what you said, Andrea, right now, just now. I quote you, or Adelaide, I don't remember. But the houses can be serious and fun at the same time.
Cioè, quanto c'è di voi
So,
in questa
how much do you belong to this sentence? Well, it's not my sentence, but it's something that I've always shared with Adelaide. I think it's for all of us. It's not just us two. And yes, it's also a way of saying, well, let's not be too serious. Okay. So you might have something very elegant, but also very funny. Yes, also there is this tradition of the Italian design that has a lot of ironic aspects in the project. So uh, let's say that it's a way of telling some stories, maybe also some serious story, because the projects are serious. So we can explain them from the functional point of view, the detail, the materials, but at the same time, we are also convinced that for sure we can improve the people's lives, but I mean, we are not providing vital functions. So we need to understand, we need to be conscious about our role, that it is important, yes, but in some cases, it's just an accessory, it's fun. Going back to the last project that I found very interesting, also because you were working in such a reduced space, small space, compared also to the apartments we've seen at the beginning of the presentation. So maybe the client was thinking that maybe there was a project about the furniture, not only a reorganization of spaces, because at the end of the day, the rooms that you have designed is like an industrialized system, something that you can replicate outside of the context. And so therefore, it was more by the client, it was read as an installation or and maybe it is more than a design project. I think it's also quite traditional compared to our houses. I mean, we have some expectations that are linked to memories, habits, and they are quite hard to leave and to abandon. So to perceive a room, to perceive a structure such as this one, it's not an easy thing to do. Exactly. But as you too were saying, uh, it becomes part of that
mettere
context.
a disposizione
Actually,
questo,
maybe it becomes the only way possible
avere questa visuale
to have
magari
the
in
view
modo
of
che
the
ci faccia
seaside
spazio
and at the same time
della vita
have
che si fa in casa
the projection of life inside of the apartment
forte e come una
with
casa
such a
vera, no?
strong landscape outside. It looks like a
Beh, c'è
postcard.
questo aspetto anche
Well, yeah,
appunto
there's also this
che
aspect of
strumenti di questo tipo facilitano la
that these kind of
condivisione
structures
e quindi
they
quello che è un po'
they ease the
certi
sharing,
aspetti
they
anche della,
facilitate
della
the sharing.
spiaggia,
So
no?
basically,
Anche perché
the idea of the
appunto
life on the seaside,
interessante
also for
trovare
very
uno
Italians,
spazio
I mean, it
spaziale
was very interesting
all'interno
to bring them
di una
back
tipologia della casa vacanze,
to
no?
the holiday house.
Andiamo pure
Very good.
avanti allora col
We can
progetto
move on then with the following
LIBERAMENSA
project,
che stavate introducendo.
the one that you were about to introduce.
Sì, LIBERAMENSA
Libera
è un
Mensa.
ristorante
Mensa is
aperto
canteen. Libera
all'interno
is free canteen.
carcere
Libera Mensa is a
circondante
restaurant
Leandro Russo Cotugno a
that
Torino.
we opened in a
Questo
jail
progetto
in
nasce
Turin.
da una mia esperienza,
This
nel senso che
project
in quel momento
came from
stavo
one of my experiences because in that moment
conducendo un
I
workshop
was doing a workshop
nella parte
in
femminile
the
del carcere
women jail,
con un gruppo di
women side of the jail, with a group of
progettazione
10,
di
12 women.
accessori femminili.
So it was a workshop
Cosa
on
capita?
female
Che tutte
accessories
le
design.
persone che entrano nel carcere, questo
So
bar
as
giustamente
everybody that entered into the jailhouse, I was attending this bar, this canteen that is
per
open
altri motivi,
to the
come
visitors or
qualche
the
anima
teachers or the
dormente
workers
specifica, questa notte
of the jail.
utilizzano anche loro come mensa,
The
quindi
guards
mentre le
used
forze
another
come bar,
restaurant
loro
as a
usano
canteen, but
questo
this is just a
posto
bar, like
come
almost like a meeting point for those who are not inmates, basically. You can have a coffee, you can have a meal.
cosa succede? Che
So what happens?
questa zona, questo bar, questa
This
mensa è
bar,
gestita da
this
un
canteen
gruppo
is managed by
e sento appunto parlare
a group and organization,
dell'intenzione di
and
aprire un
I
ristorante
basically
aperto al pubblico di sera.
heard that they wanted to open a restaurant for the public
Prima avrebbe
during
dovuto
night for
essere al
dinners.
momento, era 2012,
It was
il primo
2012,
ristorante aperto
and
all'interno
it could
del
have been
carcere
the
in
first
Italia.
restaurant open inside of a jail in
In
Italy.
realtà poi il progetto è
But
andato
actually, then
molto
the
avanti,
project they wanted to do this, but then the project didn't advance
perché
because of a
poi
series of
il
issues. And in
ristorante
fact,
viene
then
inaugurato nel
the restaurant
2016,
was
nel
premiered in
frattempo
2016, but in the meantime, they
nel
opened
frattempo aveva già
the restaurant in
aperto
the
questo
Bollate.
il ristorante.
Bollate is close to Milan,
Noi
and they're opened a very famous restaurant now.
La mia
Well,
impressione appunto
really.
del carcere di
So
Bollate
my
è stata
impression
quella
of the
di
Bollate jailhouse,
sentirmi come in
and
uno
Bollate jail, was to
spazio
feel like
dove avrei potuto essere nel centro di Milano, nel centro
I
di
could have
Torino,
been
nel
in the
centro di
center of
Roma,
Milan, in the center of Turin. I
non
could have
sentivo
been
più, no, il
everywhere.
fatto di sentirmi
I
in
didn't
un
feel
luogo dove era
the
indispensabile, necessaria
I didn't
un'esperienza
feel the
del
jail,
genere. Aprire
so it
delle
wasn't an
attività
experience.
all'interno
And
del
when you
jail
open
dove
activities inside
parlare,
of jails,
trovare dei
when
detenuti
you want
che
to let
abbiano
the
fatto
inmate
uscire
work until
dalla pena,
they finish their
permette
sentence,
che queste persone non ritornino
it will
dopo
allow for
aver
these people
commesso di nuovo
to
dei
avoid
reati.
in coming back to jail
Sappiamo
and
che il
going back to jail for
70% delle
committing
persone che
crimes. We know that
sono in carcere nel momento in
70% of
cui
people inside,
escono rientrano,
70% on inmates, the moment they are out of jail,
mentre
they go back.
luoghi dove
Meanwhile,
questo
in the places, in the jails where
avviene
we
in
have these kind of
condizioni
activities,
solo una piccola
in other countries, for
percentuale,
example,
pari circa il
uh,
10%
only a
ritorna,
small percentage
mentre il
of
resto
inmates go back to jail.
dei detenuti trova
The rest of the inmates,
un'occupazione
when they are out, they find their own occupation in
di
society.
questa l'importanza ovviamente
So this was the
è stata per noi
importance,
l'elemento,
and
no?
for us, it was
Che ci ha
the
fatto
element
decidere di
that
proporci
let us
questo
decide
tipo
to propose us
di
as a
questo
designer for this restaurant.
ovviamente uno dei primi problemi
Obviously, one of the first issues
sono
that we
stati
had
i soldi, nel
was
senso che il
money.
direttore
meaning that the director of the cooperative organization, they were enthusiastic about our proposal, but they let us understand right away that they didn't have a lot of financial contribute, because part of the fundings were spent for the kitchen and for a series of things, so they couldn't afford a huge project, obviously. And so we decided with Andrea, we looked at each other, and we were very interested in this project, and it also gave us a possibility to experiment a new way of design, even though in a way this project is aligned more or less to the Cavalier Maggiore one. So to maintain the present, transform it at the same time, always perceiving the environment in which we find ourselves. Because when you enter into a jail, into a prison, to eat, to have a meal, you need to understand that you are in prison. You can't hide it. You can transform it, yes. You can give a new dignity, especially a new dignity for the people who spend the time there. Because often in these cases, we can see how much the environment conveys a very small amount of interest and a very small amount of value to the people who live there, to the inmates and the workers. So we wanted just to give dignity to this place as a direct consequence of giving dignity to the people working and living there. This was the entrance. These are the pictures of the interior, where we kept the we kept the floor, the windows. We can move on. So basically, we kept the wainscoting, but we make it bigger. We made it more important from the space point of view. Then we created these lines of tables that you can move, you can change, also in a more discontinuous way, in order to create different kind of aggregation of people. So you can make a long, huge table or just singular tables based on how do you want to use this environment. Maybe even in nights where a lot of people book for the rest. Another element for the project were these lamps, ceiling lamps. So again, the wheel of having them big and important, and we wanted to add also the yellow glasses on the windows, always to give a different kind of reading of this element. That of course it's a closure between inside and outside. It's a partition between inside and outside, yes, but it gives a more colorful vision of the environment and a more colorful view of what you live in these areas. From our side, we also worked a lot with the companies who helped us and supported us in this process. Especially Andrea worked on these things. Well, yeah, let's say that I worked on this because when we met with the director of the jail, almost always they say, well, this is wonderful, but the problem is to realize the project. They didn't have the funds to realize it. So basically, all together, we thought about a strategy. We went to the warden and we told him, well, in some way we will find the funds, don't worry. So the idea was quite easy, because we imagined to make a project without thinking if that company would have helped us or not. We did it like we wanted to. And then we went to, for example, we went to important companies like Abbott, which gave us all the laminated. We showed the project laminated, and probably the company understood, just like other important companies, Lago, or now I can't remember all the other names involved, but the um, the answer, the positive answer, the affirmative answer was sent in a very brief period of time because they understood the project and they also understood, of course, the return uh, in advertisement, in publicity, in a way. We wanted to bring the interior design inside of weak places, let's call them, because maybe in school we are always used to work in by category. So you work with apartments, you study that, you study offices, workplaces, installations, retails. So we work by cliche in a way, but actually there are many other areas, and um, can be prisons, hospitals, schools, uh, elderly house, and I mean we always do this kind of correspondence between the rooms, the places, and ourselves. So how much the places can give or not give. So how much influence we are from the emotional point of view by the places we live in, we work in. And of course, these areas, these places are the ones that need the project most. In our country, they are all missing. There is a huge lack of this process. And so, by the end of the day, this project was basically a game for everyone. So, the prison itself received a lot of press, the company as well, we received a lot of press. So maybe the hope is to make other projects like this, Adelaide, it's not easy, but well, no, it's not easy. Maybe it was just a seed that we planted, because maybe one might think, well, uh, this mechanism worked, the project worked, and it brought satisfaction to all of the players involved. So maybe if you can do it with with such a small space, you can do it bigger spaces, you know. So of course, the huge obstacle is the financial aspect, the economic aspect that paradoxically was the easiest thing to solve because we didn't have all the bureaucratic aspects. Yeah. Yes, I wanted to finish that. It's very important to use the project to convey a meaning. Okay, so you always need this during a design project. You need to know how to understand and to comprehend what would you like to transmit to the other people, and you need to do it also in this kind of architecture design project. Before you said that it took 5 years, so it's a very long project, even if it was extremely easy. We actually did the game because when they gave us the access to start, the possibility to start, we were quite tired of it, but in some way to enter in a reality like prison compared to what we usually see through TV, to the medias, it's a very impactful experience. I mean, you have to imagine that it was all built by uh, cooperatives organization that works inside of the jail. I'll tell you a small anecdote that we always tell when we talk about this. It was like 2, 3 days from the press conference, and as always, there's this moment of rush in order to finish the job in time. And there was a guy, like a bodybuilder, who was like the boss of this internal cooperative organization. And in some way, I told him, well, Ahmed, it was called. Ahmed, look, we need to finish in 2 days. Tomorrow morning, you're here. It's very important, right? He said, architect, don't worry, I will be here for 30 years. So of course, I kind of thought about what I said, and I was frozen because sometimes you don't realize where you are and what it represents. And this, just to tell you, that was quite an experience also from the emotional point of view. Very beautiful. We hope that we could repeat this experience because it had an impact. Yeah, it was also satisfactory. Yes, absolutely. I don't know, Ali, if you have some questions. Now we have the team. You see an image of the team, and they are all inmates. Also the cook. It's not easy. I mean, the restaurant in the jail of Bollate, in the prison of Bollate outside of Italy, is a professional chef, famous chef. It's not an inmate. Meanwhile, these people in this prison, they are all inmates. So they make courses, they practice, and so some people might come because they're curious, yes. But if the food is good, the price is correct, you have an experience, so maybe they will come back. And it helps to give dignity to these people. So also the management of such a structure is very important because we're talking about people who maybe in 6 months they're out of prison. Maybe they are moved to other prisons. So it's quite complicated to manage it also from the personnel point of view. It's a social project or social architecture project. Let me use these words, and I just hope that you will have other occasions. And what I find really, really correct is what you said earlier, that there are different places who needs a project, not only the usual that we work on in school as well. So maybe, yes, we need to awake your colleagues in a way, in order for them to start to not to doing less private interiors and more others. But you know, Ali, sorry if I interrupt you, but I don't want to defend my colleagues, but you also know the problem that I honestly know that many of my colleagues would like to have this kind of experience. I just think that today there is a strong detachment from these places. Of course, here we're talking about structures managed by the public administration, so compared to a private project. And of course, most of the time with the public administration, the main goals of the project is function. And you almost lose all the time, you lose, you don't understand how a place is able to influence us from an emotional point of view. Adelaide earlier was mentioning this data about the inmates that go out and then go back to prison. We are 70. In Norway, it's 5%. They published an article. Imagine that an inmate in Italy costs 220 euro per day. And so also from the economic point of view, I mean, from the cost for the community, it's a high cost, you know. So these really are situations that make you think, because then the 30% that don't go back to jail is the same 30% of people who are involved in this kind of activity. Otherwise, jail will remain like only a place for punishment. Okay. Okay, I will move on because we have, well, you see, yes, we have still some time, but not that much. So let's try to do it maybe quicker. Well, yeah. Of course, there are many things that are that you should say that are very interesting. Yes, I know, but yeah, there are a lot of projects now. Maybe you will see 3 projects, the next 3 all in Milan. Even if we are from Turin, Milan for us now is the main market, obviously. You will see 3 projects. The first is an apartment, it's Teorema Milanese. it might represent a typical bourgeois apartment of Milan. So pay attention to the plan now. It's really the typical house with the entrance and then the hallway that goes down throughout all the entrances of the rooms. In some way, we wanted to keep this. So we thought about two things. First, on top left, there is a corner window with a wonderful view on the park on Sempione. And so we needed to evaluate this spot. And we imagined also a double house. So the open part, let's call it open space, which is the kitchen slash dining room, and the more private one, the more traditional one, let's say, which is the night area. Here you see some images of what we found. There's some suggestions of masters in the architecture of Milan, such as Gioponti, Albini, Cartella. You see also the cover of a book by James Hillman, The Soul of Places. I will explain better why we put Hillman in this house. Moving on, we see right away what happens. So in the plan, I will tell you some things that were debated, shared also with the clients. In this case, the clients always, let's say, followed really well. It was a couple of professionals, of course, so also a generous space, we might call it, just for a couple. So we split the house in two, and mainly we wanted to make the day area as an open space. So you will see on the left some schemes, not only from the outside, but also in the inside. So moving on, next slide. Here, you already see some images. This is the entrance. Just like in the tradition of the great Milanese masters, we use material like marble. And we basically gave the role of marble to divide the areas between day and night. And we were interested in this marble not only to set the spaces, like the image on the right, the dining room is characterized by this kind of Alp green marble. But maybe a lighter green, a lighter marble is addressed towards this angle window, this corner window, which in some way is the element to which you should focus.
Yes.
So also this metallic structure becomes something like indicators, like arrows, telling you where to go, telling you actually where your look should go. Next slide. And you see that the marble is not floor anymore. The marble becomes wall, ceiling. It becomes like a frame to contemplate. I mean, it wasn't a big, beautiful day that day, but you can see the park from the window. I mentioned Hillman, the author of the book, a very famous Jungian psychologist, and he worked in the analysis of spaces. And in that book, the Soul of Places, he talked about ceilings, and he talked about ceilings like one of the most one of the places that we don't look usually. And they published an article that had the headline as "In the ceilings, the gods don't live there anymore." And we always thought about the ceiling as the representation of what could transcend the material world. So it was a tool to bring our look towards above. During time, the ceilings got lower. They became a technical, the side of the fear, because we have the anti-smoking system, the conditioning system. And so basically, this field, let's say the ceilings, were completely neglected. So we created these big rows, the one that you see also in the last project in Paris. And in some way, we were interested in work on the ceiling. So there's nothing in between the ceiling and the floor, and so it's a very interesting and important element inside of this place itself. Moving on, and so you understand how very often we use structures to divide spaces. So in some way, well, both because we want to stay light, in a way we want to optimize spaces, we want to use this kind of devices. We use marble, but also this kind of separators in brass. And they will become elements to display the dining room. Yes, I might say that we give another interpretation of many typical elements of the bourgeois house. The windows, the shutters, or the fixed material that that we use for curtains, for example. We do the same things with materials and colors, because very often they ask us how do we use colors, like what is the methodology that we have to choose and to match colors and materials. I have to say that this was like a game where we wanted to push ourselves in experimenting some ideas and in sometimes overloading the rooms with chromatic choices and also butt surfaces. But we think that the experiment was successful also because you don't understand, I mean, you can't read the heaviness, let's say, the weight. Despite some areas like the kitchen with the wallpaper on the ceiling, the marble floor, the colors, it's still not that heavy. Yeah, and in fact, these are typical materials of the 60s, by the way, when this house was built. So maybe there is also the wish that some materials, some brass, marble, and then we create a contrast and a balance at the same way with some laminated and so on. Well, I think we need to rush. Yeah, some images of the bedroom. I think that this just lets you understand also how Adelaide said this kind of chromatic switch between night area and, well, say, the private area and the other one. Yes, also because there are many like there are many laminated and also not, because for example the safety window is not laminated. Yes, and here you can see a house that it's drawn. Here we start to see the main drawing elements and furniture elements, because it also had a very careful drawing towards whatever was happening. And the customer asked us this kind of intervention for the spaces. So moving on.
Sì,
Soft home.
mi inserisco io, scusate, questo è un allestimento.
Sorry, I should talk about this, and this is something that we can explain,
Contestualizzandolo anche alla mostra, no?
putting it in context to the exhibition
Quale era riferito?
they referred to. This was a staging for El Decor for the Design Week 2016 in Palazzo Bovara, Corso Venezia, Milan. Yeah, it was a setup. It was quite. It was 600-700 square meters. The client was the magazine, Decor Italia, El Decor Italia. They asked us to work alongside with the media agency, and we needed to set up this thing. It lasted for 15 days. So we wanted to give an idea of the house, and a house in which like technology, just like today technology is inside of our house, but in this way, in this case, we wanted to make it soft. So how could technology could help us in improving the things and the lives in our domestic areas? I mean, but when you look at the plan and the images, this looks like everything besides a domestic area. I mean, if you think about the spaces with the 5 meters ceiling, such decorative elements, I mean, the first thing that we asked ourselves was how should we how should we work on this space? We were I was talking to Adelaide the other day, and we were talking about the installations. And the best thing was to take all the products out and just work on the installation. Of course, we can't do it, but uh, also with some, let's say, weird elements that we did in the that we studied 60s, but we've always chosen an interaction between all the elements that are present. And now we can go faster here because there is a video at the end. Mm, it's a setup that we did in 2 months. So 2 months to set 600, 700 square meters. So also the difficult part of working with a lot of companies that from time to time they became technical sponsorship, giving lamps, materials, furniture. So maybe two were the main elements. Two were the main elements on which we worked on, like the floor, and we needed to design through the moquette. We needed to redesign them, and at the same time, we imagined as a structure work, as a canvas work, would help us to bring back the human dimension in these areas. You know, here I would go very quick because, as I said, there is going to be the video explaining you these spaces. So again, maybe we can stop here. So of course, our work, as we said before, is to give only one dress to technology in a way. So this was our goal, maybe. For example, this was like a wardrobe for the memories. There was these digital images swiping up inside of this hole, and in a way, all the other furniture needed to find their own dress, their own meaning inside of the project. Moving on.
Sì, posso dire una cosa
May I say something as
la
external?
tecnologia
Well,
non per forza
technology
deve essere
here,
cosa con la
I don't
ricerca
think it
dell'immagine
matches
futuribile,
with
futuristica.
a futuristic
Quindi la
language.
cosa interessante è che in
So
qualche
the
modo
interesting thing
quello che avete fatto voi è cercare
is that what you said earlier
fare, come dire, quello che spesso si fa
and
con
what you did is trying to avoid doing the usual things that we do when we work with
con la tecnologia, anche quella
technology,
più sofisticata, che è quello di
even the most
immaginare,
sophisticated one.
no, un
And the mistake that we always make is
quasi
to imagine almost like um,
retrofuturistica.
a
Poi l'obiettivo
retrofuturistic.
era invece di avere una
But the
visione
goal was the opposite. We
molto
wanted to give a
sofisticata e
tamed,
reale, quindi non ci si impegna
contemporary vision. Yes, yes.
di inventare la casa del futuro, ma
So we couldn't say just, okay, this is
semplicemente
the future house. No, this is today's house,
queste
like it
tecnologie
is
evolvono
actually,
così
because the
velocemente che
technology
veramente
has changed
è
so much,
impossibile
so quickly
immaginare
that
di
it's
lavorare col
impossible
futuro, il
to
futuro
imagine to work for the
sarebbe,
future.
no,
The
una
future,
settimana dopo, un
I
mese
don't know, it's
dopo.
always the next week, next month. Well, maybe we will see the video.
Non si sente.
Okay, we can't hear it.
Adesso si sente.
Now we can hear the sound.
Ok, io direi che possiamo...
So I would say that
possiamo passare al progetto
we
successivo.
can move on to the next project,
Negozio.
Bravissimi, Marica.
which is a
Un
store,
negozio
maybe?
di
Yeah, it's a store
quanti metri quadri?
of
140.
Imarica, Imarica,
A Milano, zona
in Milan,
Viale Piave, quindi zona
in Viale Piave, so next to Porta Venezia, basically.
sì,
Quasi, sì.
di bei negozi. Imarica è un
And
uno
Imarica
dei
is
store
one of
multibrand
the
rimasti a
latest
Milano.
multi-brand
La
store
proprietaria
in
Tina
Milan.
inizia la
The
sua
owner,
attività
Tina,
alla fine degli anni
started her
70,
activity at the end of the
prima
70s.
gli stilisti giapponesi a Milano,
She was the
poi
first to
dopo
bring Japanese designers in Milan, but also
esperienza,
there's Van
vive
Noten,
a
this kind of
Eindhoven,
people,
che
maybe
tra l'altro ha formato
Eindhoven,
tantissimo, quindi
uh,
nasce con un
the
negozio
Belgian designers
vicino
and Dutch.
a
So basically,
questo negozio. Cosa succede nel
he
frattempo?
started not as a store, but 2 years ago became a store. So what happens? The son
Si libera
was
uno
growing, was
spazio
growing.
sul fianco,
He entered
quindi anche i
into
residenti
the activity, and so
ampliarsi.
there was a need to enlarge the space, to
È
have more
stato
space, basically.
ovviamente un
And
percorso non facile
obviously,
perché
it
dovevamo
wasn't easy. It wasn't
convincere
easy because we needed to convince
considerava
a
il suo
person
negozio, la sua casa,
who considered the store like his
questo,
home.
no? E quello che loro ci scrivono
And this is what they write to us, the mother, the son, whoever,
Questo è il negozio che
all
vorrei, è un
together.
negozio con molta
This was the
vita,
store
però
that we would like, a store like a work of art, not too invasive. In the center, they put the center client and the dress, and affordable luxury, contemporary, exclusive that conveys fun and joy. Imalica is a meeting point. To us, it's each person is unique and important, and it must be a place of intimacy, comfort when you feel like home. And this is what she says. She wants to feel in a very private, also intimate place where she feels like home. It is like home. They care about the customers, but uh, according to her son, they also wanted to open to new clients, to change, to renovate. And so we arrived. We are with our project. If we can change slide, next one. It's a different project compared to the previous one. These were basically our inspirations, our research before we talk about the project itself, that helps us also to tell to the client what we had in mind. So the stores that were obviously important, we have the Gara Volenti, also in this case, those the volumes, the shapes, because in any case, the project, he used a plan, and you see the enlargement, 4, 5, 6 was where the store got bigger. And what I was about to say is that with this project we abandoned what we have seen in so far. So we were tempted in using these kind of bars, you see, and we thought about replacing these elements with some volumes. In this case, these are MDF finished on the surface with some stuccos in order to give this kind of thickness to the material. Of course, in a store, the materials need to be easy to manage, easy to treat, not too delicate though. So this is the structure that creates inside, creates design the space. And it also has some shelves. And going back to the ceiling aspect, the ceiling that is here, you can see it. So the Hillman influence is still quite strong, and we tend to apply Hillman's lesson in all of our projects. And we have the spotlights, and one of our ways to proceed is to react almost to like some habits that we don't like, some design habits that we don't like. So we need to find solutions. In this case, the spotlight, the rail, the spotlight that usually you often see in stores, and it's very common to use it in store because it's kind of perfect from the lighting design point of view to lit the garments and the space. But of course, they have a stylistic identity that we don't like, and we try to overcome. So sometimes there are some references. In this case, the copper and the chair designed by a laboratory, Cassia. It has a long history. The working since 200 years. To us, it's a reference. Of course, for an architect and a designer from Turin, it's an important lab. You will see now you're looking at the interior part of the store. This is a big wardrobe. This is domestic reference, like almost like it's a huge wardrobe, and you have it inside the home. You just hang your best dresses, so you can choose them. This is in plexiglass. We also designed the lamps, and also in this case we chose glass. So this is the outside, and here we see Latina on the right. This is the owner of the store, with the flowers that he personally daily take care of. And again, it really is like a home because it's still special, and it has it really an importance towards the relationship between people.
Poi forse sono, come dire, queste...
Yes, then maybe these are like the latest boutique in Milan. They're able to live because of it's like a generation that is coming on, because the son wanted this new renovation, because at the beginning maybe the mother was not didn't agree, let's say. Usually it happens that the new generation want this kind of renovation, and they need to convince the old ones. Although the project said this kind of, well, the good result is that at the end they told us, well, it looks like it has always been like this. So they got used to it very quickly. So this was the success of our project. The last one, but also as latest, actually, the latest project that we did in Paris, and is the second apartment we do in Paris. We hope to do it third. The third? Yes, it's the third. Yes, it's the third, not the second one. We hope to make others because we really like them. We wanted to design a Parisian house. The customer was a woman from Paris. He is English. They live in London. She though has a gallery of an art gallery, but the requests from these guys were to recreate this mood of the Rive Gauche of the 70s, to bring it inside of their apartment. And since they have an area with lighter colors, the one that looks at Saint-Sulpice, they also wanted some brighter, vivid colors. We wanted to play with this kind of contrast, and these are images of the pre-existing part. We can move on. The plan, of course, it's a nice apartment. It's an important intervention plan-wise, because we basically revisited the whole walls. To give the function they asked, so the area, the day area and the night area divided. Yeah, it always has the theme of the storytelling. We always suggest to discover the house, the place, those who live there. There is a story there. It can be funny, but at the same time, not bad, but at the same time, beautiful and useful to set your research, the base of your research, the root of your research. Well, yes, we have this aspect. In this case, yes, we had fun in. No, leave the image that you had before. So we had fun in hiding some esoterical symbol. Maybe you might know this church of Saint-Sulpice because of the Da Vinci Code. They shot the movie inside. But this church actually has this very, very famous Santiago, and it has also quite a difficult history linked to the esotericism. And Adele mentioned the Rive Gauche, and sorry, there's a microphone on, so I can't hear. So we wanted to leave to make the couple of the 70s mood. For example, the Pompidou Museum was designed in the 70s, so we wanted to take some architectural elements. here you see some images of a community that was created on the Bindo. Again, there is a microphone on, I can't hear. There is a kind of experiment, we did some experiments on the materials, so this was part of our inspiration, the experiments on materials coming from this community that was born in India, the south of India. This was Catherine Deneuve in the movie La Belle du Jour. She still lives there.
Sulla Plaza Saint-Sulpice,
She still lives there. In apartments designed by French. These are French design objects. We can move on. I haven't understood. No, this is Ali. Ali has is speaking. So this aspect was strongly suggested from the client, and this house was not daily lived, let's say, but they wanted to make it as a consequence of the London gallery that they had. So also they wanted to use the house basically to hold some events, to display and show some artifacts and work of art, so also to show this part of contemporary African part. It was a really strong element that wanted to attach to this project. Moving on. Yes, I mean the easy thing in the second house is like we have seen also in Venice. The kitchen is not a very important element. They don't ask for a big space to dedicate to the kitchen. So usually the customers are focused on other spaces, the shared spaces, the day area, maybe the bedroom, the guest room. Obviously, the kitchen in the second house is a secondary element, we might say. Well, yes, this, for example, in the plan, it seems that the dining room and the living room, it looks like they are separated. And there was a wall, it was a pillar, the wall that separated those two. These houses were built in the 1800s, uh, built in wood. In France, there's also some laws, like in Venice, that doesn't allow you to change some structures. So, but there was a possibility. There was a possibility to have the perception that living room and dining room were one space. But actually, when you're in the dining room, the two environments look that they're isolated. And so we worked on some kind of internal architecture that we can see from the following images here. You can see some of the aspects of these partitions, like with the Imalica. And these were covered in clay, if I'm not mistaken. And if you want, they also remind us some traditional African uh, parts done in clay, in fact. And it was an interesting background for the work of art that should have been and could have been displayed here. I don't know if you noticed that there was in the Saint-Sulpice church picture, there was a logo that is the logo of the confraternity of the Saint-Sulpice church. So basically, the big rose is a kind of reference to that logo. So we had a little bit of fun here in connecting and linking uh, these aspect of esotericism inside of the house. Yes, but using the ceiling, talking about the ceiling, I don't know if you noticed, basically the Malika's ceiling becomes a rug here. So there's always this connection. This was personalized for this apartment, just like the table. And and you can see again these connections between what we did and this apartment. Moving on.
ambienti doveva, no, essere un ambiente luminoso.
This should have been
Molto francese.
a bright place, very French, very Parisien. Moving on.
Di nuovo, gli elementi no, diventano arredi. Alla fine questi elementi che noi inseriamo, che siano le barre, che siano
And these elements that we inserted, whatever they are, and they always an opportunity for us to create a furniture like this fireplace. We can create something functional out of this. And this becomes like again a link between the day area and, well, yeah, they connect one area to the other. They give a perspective of what is about to happen, basically. Moving on. This is a kitchen that you can't see, but is something that you can close. Moving on. It's a slide kitchen. Bedroom now. Bedroom, we have an original. That's by Gio Ponti. And the room was like a tribute.
Creando un po' questa camera da letto con questi mobili in continuità.
With this kind of furniture design by Ponti. And as you said before, also this aspect of the house that was a bit more, I don't know, limited, if you want. It didn't have a lot of light, a lot of view, but so they needed more character, you see, maybe more material, yeah, from the wallpaper and so on. Moving on. Again, the bathrooms designed on purpose for the project. So also here, this thing about using, it was laminated, fake marble laminated, and in a way we insert also elements. I mean, what the kitchen, I don't remember which marble we used for the kitchen, but in some way we played also with in representing the material, an imitation of the material maybe.
Che vuole essere espresso del progetto.
And here you can see the wall with these glass insertions that splits the studio area with the bathroom, with the second bathroom actually. And moving on, the bedroom with its bathroom. Also this one designed with colors, materials. The Napa leather coming from Turin. Yeah, the tiles that you see on the wall are part of a collection. It's part of it's called Ceramica Vogue. So we also designed these, and they are part of a collection called Decorame. Next one. Maybe this is over? No. Maybe this is the last one of the bathroom, maybe. Yeah. 1 hour and a half. Well, 1 hour and a half. There's still a lot of people connected. You were very accurate, so it's a good sign. So I wanted to say right away that if you have some question, guys, there is a chat, so you can ask the question and write them in the chat. In the meantime, I would just wanted to give some conclusions, as to say a couple of things that I actually wrote down. One has to do with your language that is very peculiar, that consists, correct me if I'm mistaken, but it consists in a kind of mashup. I mean, trying to keep together elements from the past with new elements. And especially for the first project that we have seen, where this kind of attitude approach was very clear. And also, and so to, as a result, have a very original thing, but that keeps two dimensions live at the same time. So the past element and the new one. almost like sometimes also like a graphic element to this game of, let's say, cutting some areas of colors also through the architectural elements. And I think that this is one of your constant elements, let's say, continuous sign. Uh, Also the elements that describe the space, that are areas and volumes, which are also a way to measure space in a way, because you do this kind of things in the Venice apartment. Uh, I'm always impressed by the internal structures. Uh, and you said that in order to highlight them, to emphasize them, we paint them. But this is also a way to dictate
la parete stessa, giocare quindi con
to dictate the wall itself, to play with measurements in this case. So just a series of observation. You didn't even have to answer. So maybe it's just to recap. Or, well, we think that we consider the house as a third client, and is always something that we should keep into consideration. It's something that we are profoundly attached to, and we could never enter into a place, into a house, without realizing what we see. And the other component that is transversal to everything we've seen, to all the projects we have seen, is also the craftsman component, because you have this attitude and towards certain materials. And a lot of artisans that you mentioned, and all the personnel, the craftsmen that are working for you, are skilled and are specialized. So really, I I thank you, I congratulate you because of this, also for this, let's say, support to the Italian artisans. You mentioned the craftsmen from Turin that since many years are doing a certain kind of work, and you still count on them. You still work with them. No, I was thinking about what you are saying now. Actually, the house that we have seen in Milan. I mean, the marble became for sure an element as, let's say, the main element. And those who realized, the craftsmen who realized this, are Catella brothers in Turin, that are mentioned in Joe Ponti's book, Amante l'Architettura, a 150-year-old company. So probably at the time they were grandfathers, grandparents, or parents, I don't know. But in a way, they are the excellence. So skills that are transmitted from generation to generations. For example, the metallic parts are coming from the Cordero. So not only, we don't work only with craftsmen from Turin, but in this case, yes, I mean, the one that I mentioned, yes, and they still are excellence. But always when we are abroad, when we have projects abroad, we always ask Italian craftsmen to work for us, to supply, let's say, some elements. So it's a kind of habit that we have, a way of working. Yes, I mean, when we renovated the house in Corso Stempione, was impressed by the quality. The client was impressed by the quality. And in fact, I'm sorry that we can't let the houses that we design, we can't let them open to the public in a way, to of what this craftsman did, because there's such a high quality of the project that needs to be maintained, of course. For example, do you remember when I think it was 2012, 2013, I don't know, but we did this project in Paris, in Montparnasse, for the director of the magazine Decoration, and she was astonished by the quality of the craftsman that we brought from Italy for the realization of the furniture. Of course, for someone who lives in Paris, so in some way she's able to face herself with such a high level of quality, also local high level. and she still was impressed. Also because of a pricing matter. Yeah, let's say that there is a huge part of the work that obviously in these situations you can't see, and we can't explain, we can't tell, but there are a lot of hours spent in relationship with the customers, the craftsmen, the executive rendering, the executive drawing, the materials. So I mean, it's complicated job, of course. I can imagine. They are asking if you also had some inspiration from the figurative arts. I mean, besides architect, you didn't mention. This is also my curiosity, I have to say. I don't know, artists or some specific movements in time. Well, almost everything. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we all have some passions, you know, movies, theater, dance, ballet. So anything might become um, a way for us to enrich ourselves and to transform, because we need constantly to move on, also through these elements, also through these visits and these readings as well, of course. In any case, I would say that this component of storytelling that is always present in your projects and that you can see from, also from the kind of mood board table that you use to introduce the project, is quite strong. And it's also one of the most interesting elements, I guess. Yes, and also useful. I mean, it's useful. Let's not forget, because when there is a moment of indecision, you can use these reference, the research as a reference. It helps you also to make some choices that, of course, they're never random. All the choices are taken based on the roots, so on some specific reason. Yes, and these kind of references are also the one that helps us to maintain the idea of the project with the customer, with the client, because when the client decides to share this path, and then maybe we can change some objects. Yes, we can change some, we might change some furniture. Yes, but in any case, the goal remains the same. Good. So I would say that we can finish up. We can close this. And well, first of all, we thank you again because you have been with us for a long time, and you have told us in detail all these very, very interesting projects of yours. So thank you again very much. Thank you, guys. And also for the next live meeting, maybe, or hopefully in school. Well, thank you and goodbye to everybody. Goodbye. See you next. Good night to everybody. Good night, guys.